The views and opinions expressed by contributors on the Spoon River Gothic podcast are their own and do not necessarily reflect the position of the host. Material heard on the Spoon River Gothic podcast is intended for adult listeners. This podcast deals with mature topics that may not be suitable for all listeners. Listener discretion is advised. This is Spoon River Gothic, Narrative of a Double Homicide, Part 2.
No one is available to take your call. Please leave a message after the tone.
What's the emergency? 3 seconds.
I would have done anything to save them, but I couldn't. But I'm lucky it didn't cost me my life too. And, you know, it was so confusing for those few moments. And life's never seemed the same since that day. But I'm not the victim. I know who the victims were. And, you know, her family was also victims. They asked me to be a pallbearer, so I felt like some of them anyway. You know, they lived in Connecticut, long ways from Illinois. So Donna did go home for Christmas and New Year's. The year before she died, you know, she'd only been back a few days when that happened. So it was, I guess the only thing I had to hang on to with them was that she must have told them that we got along pretty good, or because there was a lot of suspicion of me for a month or more. In fact, I was the number one suspect for a while, and it wasn't so much that I couldn't stand that. It's that my wife and I hadn't lived where we are now very long at all, and we had 2 little kids, and it was the day after my son's first birthday, and I invited Donna and Justine to come over for supper that night because it was snowing and cold, and my old dad called and said he wasn't going to be able to make it down, which there's no way he should have come down in that kind of weather and went home after dark, but they didn't come over, and you know, that was the following morning was when she died. Just incredible, you know, just incredible. And as it occurred to me that they were gone, you know, for a week or more, I thought it was an accident. But then gradually, I started cooperating with the investigation because I would have done anything I could do, to help find the truth and help. But then the police really started giving me a hard time. I'm a lawyer. They finally started putting me on guard, and I told them what I thought of them and went home. And, then it was quite some time again. I mean, they had all the evidence, but they didn't put it together until that man almost killed another woman. The fire chief, those idiots, thought there wasn't first of all, I was hearing from friends around town that they were saying there wasn't a smoke detector in that apartment. And that was a lie. They should have looked for it. My guess is he must have taken it down and probably disabled it when it went off, or else he was already out of the apartment before the smoke detector went off. But they had that wrong. God, actually an insurance person went in there and immediately found the smoke detector, analyzed it, and said it was operational. So I don't know what that was about. And then the chief of police came in the bank and slapped his hand on the desk of the bank's executive vice president and said, "Why are you protecting him?" Harold said, "Get your ass out of here." I mean, I know all about that guy. You probably know what projection is. People who have their own faults, have trouble trusting other people, and project their own faults on others. That's what was going on with the poor clowns from the Canton PD that were investigating, and the fire chief who thought he was investigating. The sharpest tools in the shed. I don't know how many homicides those guys had handled. I had handled none. But the questions they were asking me and I was answering got so stupid. I don't have a doubt in my mind that I could learn any of your jobs. And if I wasn't better at it than you are, I would quit and find something I was better at. And I am damn sure none of you could have my job. That really insulted them, but it woke them up a little bit. That's when I knew it was over and it was time to go. They came and got me at my house and wanted me to go down to the cop shop and talk to them about what had happened. And that was like, I don't know how long after, but quite a while. We didn't know yet that they were investigating it as a homicide. And as soon as I left the house, two of them came over and started interrogating my wife. And she caught on to what was going on real quickly, and she just threw them out of the house because she didn't want to take the chance of saying anything that would have made them suspicious of me, like I did myself. But I was a lawyer. I was just telling them the truth, and I had nothing to tell them to give them any suspicion whatsoever, The investigators thought either we were having an affair or I was trying to cover up an embezzlement. And I knew by the time I was a child that murdering people would draw more attention to crimes than it would cover it up. I would not have hurt those two people for anything in the world, Donna and I were friends. She's actually, other than the law firm that hired me, she was they sent me to the bank she worked at then to open an account. And we kind of made friends the first time we met, at least enough to remember each other. And then her daughter, my wife and she and Justine and our daughter were nearly the same age. Justine was about a year older, so my wife had babysat both of them and let them play together and stuff. And I knew John's family a little bit, and it was so frustrating because my wife and I started telling each other, those morons aren't going to figure out what happened. We've got a better chance to figure out what's happened here. And once we knew it was a homicide from different things people were telling us, we were just so frustrated that we knew they weren't going to be able to solve it because they just, they had the imagination of a microwave or something. My wife watches too many crime shows still, and I don't know if that got her started on it. I hate things like that. I don't like to watch anything about the law because, that was my life for long enough, and I was glad to leave responsibilities that I had behind and let somebody younger who needed a job take over. But that's the biggest thing that's ever happened in my life, and pain and suffering that I went through for a while after that, and still do, but not a day has passed. 30 years now? Not a day has passed that I don't think about that for them at some time in the day. But the police department was so pathetic, and the people at the state's attorney's office knew me enough to think, good God, you better bring some evidence down here before we go out and arrest him, because they knew me. Members of the bar, judges and everybody knew me far better than the police department. So they would never have solved it, I don't believe, if he hadn't have struck again and they got him that time and then started looking at it again, and someone eventually knew more of the background of Donnie Bull and came to me and told me what they knew, and I gave them the business card that one of the law enforcement people had given me, and I think that helped to point them more in the right direction. But when the trial came, they were all trying to make up with me, and the chief of police comes in and says, I'm sure it was really hard for you, but I want you to know that I'm really proud of my guys. I said, Chief, either you don't know what I know, or it doesn't take much to make you proud of your guys, because they didn't solve a damn thing. They had all the evidence right in front of them and were acting like they couldn't see it. I know how the crime got solved. You should too. He got mad and walked away. But for him to come up and try to make up with me by lying to me, I wasn't having it. They ended up firing the guy for completely different reasons, who actually did most of the interviewing me. He's just a moron. And years later, he got a job as a car dealer, and I went out there to buy a car. Oh, God, he came to talk to me, so I kind of tried to apologize, and I said, you're never going to sell me a car in this life, give it up. My wife says I never forgive anybody for anything, but I do, as long as someone who's really made me mad tells me their side of the story. It's over and forgotten, I don't bear any grudges, but fool me twice, shame on me. But, I don't talk about it, but I'm not afraid to bring it back up, It kind of makes me feel better to know that someone understands, in case it might help somebody else someday. We brought it on ourselves to some extent, and that was tragic because she wasn't the kind of person to be suspicious of anybody in this little town either, just like I wasn't, but that was kind of what led to it, I think. He was a predator, saw her, thought she was attractive, and story is, drank a case of beer, did crack cocaine somehow, turned into an animal, and did what he did early in the morning. my rambling, getting things off my chest. She wasn't your friend. 200 of people in that town, not just me. Her family came to the funeral and said, I can't believe how many people are here. I told them why. She grew up in Connecticut, but I don't remember precisely, but she told me, I think after she started working with me, she graduated from Marquette in Milwaukee and had some relatives, actually at least one in Canton. And I think her family had started up around LaSalle, Peru, where she was buried. Eventually, the casket I carried was empty, but didn't know that at the time. So she had been to Illinois a few times, apparently, and something made her come down here to get a job after she graduated. And she worked for the competing bank in town until basically they were shutting down their trust department and probably didn't need her. And then she called me and said, would you feel uncomfortable if we worked together? And I said, no, not at all. Would you? And she laughed, said, no, not at all, because we'd known each other for quite a few years there. There was nothing between us other than some friendship, and then eventually working together after the bank agreed to hire her. I needed help, and she was experienced, and she was just as good to work with as anyone could have been. I had trouble replacing her when she was gone. And every day, if I got in one of the trust files, I'd see work that she had done. That she was just responsible, came to work on time every day, treated everyone in the bank and in town great. She was a very good worker, and to me, a very nice person, and beyond any doubt, a good mother. I think her whole family's very upstanding people, and I was glad that I got to meet them all and get to know them better, but the circumstances of meeting most of them couldn't possibly have been worse. And once she had her child, once she had a husband, I have no doubt he was the most important thing in life to her. And once she had Justine, there was no doubt that she was a good mother. She talked a lot about her family. When she found out that her mother had cancer, she was really obsessed with that, and her mother didn't live very long. And, quite a few people from the bank went up to LaSalle, Peru for her mother's funeral, and she was just a nice Italian Catholic girl. That's about all. But, I don't like to stereotype people. But on the other hand, I think I've learned in life that if you put people in categories, at least it kind of gives you a frame of reference there as you get to know them. She'd only been back from Connecticut for a very few days. I took a little heat at the bank for letting her go during the holidays because first day in January was a big day for the trust department, but she wanted to go home real bad. And let me know that. And I said, you got vacation coming, you go, we'll get it worked out until you get back. And when she got back, she thanked me profusely. And there's no way I would have told her no, she couldn't go home and have Christmas and New Year's with her family, my God. And other bank officers came in, a couple of them that thought I was fighting to be the president or something, tried to criticize me, and I threw their butts out of my office in no uncertain terms. I was old enough that I try to get along with everybody, but don't try to abuse me because I'm not going to take it. My wife had bought me what was for us a very expensive winter coat not long before that. And when I went back to work, people saw that my hair was singed a little bit, and there are still tiny specks on the lapel of that coat that I can see. It's still hanging in the closet. It was a black, long, can't remember, what do you call that stuff? Kind of a fuzzy, suede-like thing. My wife paid over $400 for that thing. You know, what, Christmas of 83 or 84. That was a very nice dress coat that I could wear to the bank or to church or a funeral or wherever I was going. And I haven't worn it now for a long time, and people told me when they came in my office, you know, I just kind of sat there with my head in my hands for about an hour after I went back to work. And quite a few people stopped in to talk to me, all meaning well. One guy I hardly knew, but who knew Donna, came in my office, and we were friends from then until he died. He was an old man, pretty important guy in town. Came in and told me that he was a captain in World War II and put 4 of his men in a Jeep to cross a river. I have pictures of my dad driving a Jeep in a river in Germany, and that Jeep sunk. 2 of those guys died. I didn't talk to a police officer at the scene of the fire. I talked to some people from the fire department, and I talked to an investigator for the state fire marshal's office. And actually, the investigator for the state fire marshal's office, I found out later, did a very good job of questioning me and understood every answer that I gave him, where the local people tried to twist everything I answered into something they couldn't believe. You know, and I just won't say how I know everything that happened from their investigation, but I do, and you know, I knew as soon as I saw the results of their investigation. They actually talked to the murderer, I think that very morning, and you know, the case was laid out as plain for them, you know, that as plain as the nose on their face, you know. What were they doing, you know, for a month that almost cost another young lady her life? Yeah, it just infuriates me. But I'm not a cop. But I do know more about the law than any of them. And I probably know more about the criminal law than most of them. That's kind of, they learn what they have to, you know. And I'm sure they were already complaining. And I know for a fact from friends at the courthouse that they were trying to get me arrested with no evidence at all other than being Donna's boss and the first one on the scene. I tried to get him to go inside. And the fire chief said, "We can't go inside until we vent the fire." I said, "Look, I pulled the air conditioner out of the window right beside the front door, and I opened the front door. I think I closed it behind me when I left. You know, I vented the fire. Probably didn't help anything, but I didn't even know there was a fire." He goes, "We can't go in there." They climbed up on the roof and shot the hole in the freaking roof, you know. All that took, I don't know how long, but it seemed like an hour to me, standing outside in the cold, you know, being pretty sure that there were 2 people inside that I cared about that I couldn't find. So I tried to get him to go inside. When they ended up going inside, I think the guy that put the Canton Fire Department's new mask on so that you could, like, see in the dark, I knew that guy, and I had donated $100 of my own money back when I had very little, so that the Canton Fire Department could buy that piece of equipment. So he got right in there, and when he came out, I went up to him so I could see what was going on, and he said, "We've got 2 people in there." And that was the end of it for me, because I knew who they were. And one of my friends that worked for the newspaper came up and talked to me, and I was really glad to see him, and he really calmed me down. he and I walked around out there and just talked, you know. He's a photographer. We're still friends. I can't tell you what time I got back to the bank, really. Time was standing still. But when I went back to the bank, several people called me and stopped in. I think my brother called before noon. But then the guy who I asked to go with me took me over to his house for lunch. And his wife had something for us to eat, and we went out on their screen room, and it was really cold out. But we went out on their porch, which was enclosed, and sat there. And I just didn't have anything to talk about, but they talked to me mostly about the birds, their bird feeder, and you know, I knew they were really trying to help, and I love them both then, still do. Good people, very good people, better people than me probably. They were raised better. My wife and I grew up poor families, you know, raised kind of helter-skelter, but we were better with our kids because we knew what not to do. People started telling me things that they knew, and it wasn't long until I put things together. And eventually someone told me that there was no smoke in their lungs. That was the clincher. You know, I understood that instantly. And exactly how they found that out, that just shows you how this town leaks. You know, a friend of mine told me that they were in a coffee shop, and I heard one of the fire department people say, yeah, there wasn't any fire alarm in there. The law said there had to be. And I already knew by then that there was. The guy that had the fire insurance policy on that played football for my brother at Monmouth College. So when I came to Canton, he had heard a lot about me from my little brother. And he got over there, and I think he found a fire extinguisher. And I think that was later that day. I think it might have been dark by the time he got there. He went over there and looked over the house, and I think he found the fire extinguisher. Holy Christ, you know, the fire department and police had been there, and they didn't find the fire extinguisher, and the insurance agent did? Come on. I guess they had donuts to eat and traffic to direct or something in this city of 12,000 with half a dozen stoplights. Homicide cops, they weren't. Once we knew for sure it was a homicide, we just wanted it solved. And because those idiots definitely were trying to build a case against me, but I just had enough faith in everyone that you can't make a case where there's none. It's pretty hard to do, you know. It's pretty hard to convict a guilty person if you've got a decent prosecutor, judge, jury. I like to think that the criminal law, for the most part, does a pretty good job. Nobody pleads guilty these days. Everybody wants to get out of everything, from the former president of the United States on down. You know, they try to plea bargain everything, and I didn't have anything to plea bargain. I told those guys the very first thing, I want to tell you the truth of everything I know and everything I saw. And I saw things that morning that no one else did. But I couldn't get in that apartment. I just knew if I got in there, I wasn't going to get out. You know, the smoke was incredibly thick. Incredibly thick. You can't imagine. You really can't imagine. And for a little while it was white. I still kind of wonder what was burning there, that the smoke could be so white. But it poured out of that rectangular window like a smokestack, you know, like it was a locomotive. And the wind was really strong, and the smoke came out toward me, and then immediately got whipped away, I think, towards the east, you know. And that was when, you know, I just had to get inside. I mean, I would have punched through the front door with my fist, but I saw that metal, and I just took a hold of it, still had my gloves on, ripped it off, made a little hole by the door handle, took one of my gloves off, I put it under my other arm like I have a habit of doing. I reached inside and unlocked the door and swung the door open. Oh my God, what a nightmare. But I thought, maybe I can see better. So I think I got down on all fours right in the doorway, and I could see a glow, which to me, I thought was probably the place, not necessarily where the fire started, but what was burning most or hottest at that moment. It was just a glow through the smoke. I saw it. I told them that. They said, there's no way you could see that. I go, bullshit. I saw it. I'll tell anybody who wants to know that I saw that, and I have a pretty good idea how far away it was and the angle it was from where I was crouching. I saw it. They'll just, I don't even think they wrote that down. They only wrote down something that sounded funny. Oh, they said, do you know anything about fire? I said, well, when I was growing up on the farm, there would be things around the farm, that my dad would tell me to gather up and burn. So I started burning trash and wood and stuff at a young age. And then we used to go fishing and we'd build a fire and stuff. And when I lived in Galesburg, I had a fireplace put in my house. That's it. So yeah, I probably do know a little bit more about fire than most people do. Or than some people do, actual fire, because yeah, I have started a lot of fires.
Spoon River Gothic is a production of Lonebird Media in association with CZ Studio and Radio Verite. The show is produced by August Olson, editing, directing, and producing by Corey Zimmerman, audio mastering and engineering by E. Mastered. Research is done by Anne-Marie Cannon, Chelsea Mesa, and me, Jinra Illustrissimo. Spoon River Gothic is written and hosted by Corey Zimmerman. You can follow the show at czstudio.works and read the blog at spoonrivergothic.com. Show some love by leaving us a rating or review on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And stay tuned for the next episode as we dive deeper into the Donald Bull case. Thank you for listening. This is Spoon River Gothic, narrative of a double homicide.